Hello, my name is Madeline and welcome to my channel Cozy Cottage Chapters, and welcome to another video about one of my favorite books. I made a video like this in the same kind of style for Dombey and Son, and I really enjoyed this kind of way of thinking about a book and coming up with 10 things that I really loved about it and sharing those things with you. What makes me want to read a book is not the plot description, it's somebody who loves this book talking about the reason why they love it so much. So I'm hoping that you might also get inspired, if you haven't read Little Women, to read this lovely book because it is probably my favorite book of all time. So without further ado, let's just get into it. Like I said, this is a list of 10 things in no particular order that I just absolutely love about Little Women. There are so many things that I love about this book. It was kind of challenging to come up with this list, but I think I have summarized more or less my feelings about this book and all of the different reasons that I enjoy it. Next up is the family dynamics in this story, but particularly the relationship between the sisters. If you don't know, Little Women is the story of 4 sisters, Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, and it is their coming of age story. And we just follow them as they grow up and mature. And like any siblings, they have their good days and their bad days. There are moments where they hurt each other, they upset each other, but we see that there is just such a deep, profound love and are really there for each other when it is important and when it matters, and I just love their dynamic so much. I love that you get to see the daily life of these sisters and the daily struggles and the little things that happen that turn into big things and the fights they have and how they reconcile. It's just so charming and beautiful. Number 2 is the fact that this is, in my opinion, a very easy to read classic book. It is written for children, like it is a children's book in its original sense, but I don't let that dissuade you from reading it as an adult. An adult can pick up much more on the themes and the depth of this book than a child, but that is to say that the sentence structure and the overall story is pretty easy to read. It's not like reading some heavier classics, if that makes sense. Like, it's a pretty good entry point, I feel like. If you haven't read a lot of classic literature, Little Women is a really good starting point because it's easier to understand, but it also has some really deep themes to it. It's not just a surface level story. So I would definitely recommend it in that case. Number 3, there is some travel in this book. I won't say which character because I don't want to give anything away, but one of the sisters travels to Europe and we, go with her in many ways, and we get to see her traveling around in France and Italy. I don't think she goes to Switzerland, but anyways, we get letters home and we get a bit of her story in Europe and the kinds of things she's doing and experiencing, and that's a lot of fun to get that different setting in this story as well. Number 4, this book is chocked full of life lessons. Like I said, we see the ups and downs of daily life. We see these girls maturing. There are so many moments where they make mistakes, and Louisa May Alcott really guides us through their process of learning from their mistakes and how they improve in the future, or maybe don't improve and make the same mistake and we're back in the same situation. But it's so beautiful to see these kinds of lessons being taught and learned. One of the kind of important parts of this story early on is that the girls decide to kind of emulate the characters in A Pilgrim's Progress, and they're kind of going on their own pilgrim journey and trying to improve and trying to gain virtue. And I just loved seeing their progression as they learn kind of the small challenges that they have to face and how they can face them well. And it's such a beautiful story, very, very full of life lessons, which makes it a wonderful book for children, but also very impactful as an adult because these are the same challenges that everyone faces always. In a similar vein, but also different, is number 5, and that is, in my opinion, that this book is a masterclass in parenting. Marmee, the mother character of these girls, is such an amazing mother. Like, she is so good. And particularly this time rereading it, I was just struck by her wisdom and how she mothers these girls, and just her philosophy of things was so impactful. There are a couple of moments in the story. One particularly stood out to me, where Amy, the youngest daughter, is wanting to invite a bunch of her friends from her art class over to their house, and these girls are all much more wealthy than the March family. And so Amy has decided that she needs to kind of put on a show for them. She needs to, get all of the fancy food that they're used to and have carriages and all of the things that these girls expect. And Marmee tells Amy, I don't think this is a great idea. Like, you shouldn't spend all of this money that you can't really afford to spend doing something and like pretending that this is how you live when this is not how you live. You should just do what you are capable of doing. And Amy says, no, if I can't do it my way, I don't want to do it at all. And Marmee says, okay, like, you can do what you want. You can make your choice. I will support you. I will try to help you. And not to give anything away, but things do not go well, and they don't go the way Amy planned. And Amy comes back to Marmee, and Marmee does not say, I told you so. I knew this would be terrible. She comforts her and she helps her learn from her mistakes. And I just loved the way that Marmee is at the same time very direct. She tells Amy, like, I don't think this is a good idea. I don't think you should do this. But at the same time, she is supportive of her and will let her choose her own path and be there to kind of help her learn from her mistakes when she makes them. And that's just, having those two pieces together is just so crucial and so important. And I just loved spending time with Marmee in this reread, and such a wise character. And yeah, I just highly recommend it for any parents out there. Number 6, this is another one that I kind of have to tiptoe around because I don't want to say too much and I don't want to spoil anything, but the way suffering is portrayed in this book is so good. Louisa May Alcott was a Christian, not a Catholic, but I think she has a very Catholic understanding of suffering and the role that it plays. One of our characters suffers quite a bit in this novel. I won't give anything away, but she is suffering. And it would be very easy for this character to be like, woe is me, life is terrible, there is no meaning, I shouldn't have to endure this. But she doesn't do that at all. She very much accepts kind of what she has been given and that this is kind of what she has. And she comforts other people in her suffering. She is trying to help others and not just kind of focus on herself. She very much takes this cross that she has to carry and carries it very well. And this was something that particularly stuck out to me this reread, was how this character suffers so incredibly well. And most of us will not suffer in the same way that this character does, but it's such a good example for the smaller things that we have to put up with and how we can do that well. Yeah, it's hard to talk about without giving too much away, but that is another thing I love. So we have quite a bit of romance in this book. I wouldn't consider it a romance, but there is romance involved. To kind of see the whole phase of things. We see characters falling in love, and we see kind of what happens past that happily ever after. And I'll be vague here again, but there's one character who falls in love, gets married, and has children, and there comes a point kind of when her children are young that her and her husband are, starting to drift apart. They have these young kids that they're taking care of, and she's very worried about her kids, and he is worried about his work, and they're kind of two ships passing in the night kind of situation. And there's a moment when Marmee talks to one of the daughters and is like, you know, like you really need to prioritize your relationship. Like this is, you know, you're always going to be married to him. Your kids will like grow up one day, but you will still be married to this man. And, you know, if you kind of forget about him, that's a problem. And she just gives her so much wisdom. And I just loved getting to have that little glimpse. I think it's so realistic. It's, you know, what kind of everyone experiences. Everyone says, you know, like it's hard when you have young kids to stay connected with your spouse. And I loved that so much, and loved this kind of glimpse into the reality in so many ways of marriage. And it's not just stopping at this happily ever after, everyone is married and everything is good. You get to see kind of the ups and downs of daily life. And it's just a very real, honest portrayal, in my opinion. Number 8, this book is full of characters that feel very real. Each of the sisters has a very different personality, but feels flesh and blood. Like they feel like real people, you know. Marmee feels like a real person. Their friends and other characters in the book, they feel so real. And I love this about this book so much, is that each of the girls has their own personality and has their own quirks and things, but they feel like real people. They are not either good or bad. They're complex people who are full of both traits. And yeah, I love the characters in this story. Number 9, there are a lot of book-ish and book references in this story. We have Jo, one of the sisters, loves to read, and so we often hear about the books she's reading. She reads Charlotte Mary Young, The Heir of Redcliffe at one point. Like I said, there's mentions of The Pilgrim's Progress. There are lots of other books I feel like that are mentioned in this story. So it's great for a book lover, and I haven't read The Heir of Redcliffe yet, but I imagine it would be very fun to read that and then come back to Little Women and understand why Jo was so emotional at that point in the story based on what happened. So if you love books, if you love classic literature, you will love Little Women for all of these references, and it will definitely grow the list of books that you want to read. Number 10, this is something that could apply to lots of different books, lots of classics in general, I think. But this is particularly true for me for Little Women, and that is that I connect to this book and to the characters in it in so many different ways at different points in my life. This is kind of like the classic good mark of literature, is that you can read it and reread it and different things will stand out to you. Different characters will make an impact. You will relate to this book based on kind of what situation you're in your life differently. But I think the way Little Women is set up with these 4 different characters, these 4 different girls, these sisters, who are all so different. But honestly, at each time that I've reread Little Women, I feel like I identify with one of the sisters in a different way. Like they're so different. People are like, I'm a Jo, I'm a Meg, I'm an Amy, whatever. But I feel like I'm all of the sisters at various different points in my life. And I think that makes it so much fun to read, because you're not just one of these characters. You are all of them. Like, you could be all of them at different points in your life. And that makes it so interesting. This is it for my list of 10 things that I love about this book. As you can tell, Little Women is probably my favorite book. It's so hard to say that definitively, but honestly, it's probably my favorite book. It is the book that I've reread the most, and just a story that sticks with me and I love so very much. So if you have read Little Women, let me know what you loved about it or maybe didn't love about it. And if you haven't read it yet, I hope that this list maybe inspired you to pick it up, because it is a very worthwhile read. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye.